Welcome to Geek Philosophy, where we love geeky wisdom. If you're new to the channel, my name's Brian, and today we're going to talk about a mechanic from 4th edition D&D. Yeah, that edition, the one that a lot of people weren't really happy with, but just like many others in recent years, I have found a few things about 4th edition that have become pretty useful. In particular, the skill challenge mechanic. If you're not familiar with the skill challenge mechanic, it's structured sort of as a way to resolve complex challenges outside of combat. It encourages player creativity and teamwork and adds depth and variety to the gameplay. At least in my experience, that's what it does. In 4th edition, a skill challenge was structured so that the players have to use their skills and their abilities to overcome a series of obstacles in pursuit of a specific goal. Now, players had to accumulate a certain number of successes before they accumulated a certain number of failures. Each player takes a turn and describes the skill that they would use to face that challenge, and then the DM would narrate the result and how it affects the overall challenge as a whole. So that said, I've adapted things for 5e, at least the 5e that I like to play. So yeah, it's different from what other people do, and that's okay. First, I define the overall objective of the challenge. Now, it could be something as simple as sneaking past a group of guards, but it could also be navigating a dangerous jungle environment. Now, you see, travel is one of those things that can be tricky. Some people skip it all together and you just end up where you want to go. Other people slog through it with one roll after another and just describing things on the fly, or having a very long drawn out thing that you're writing ahead of time to describe what the travel is like. Absolutely nothing wrong with any of those things, if that's fun for you. But with the skill challenge approach, there is another option. So having a skill challenge and setting an objective lets the players know, hey, first of all, you're in a skill challenge, and this is what you're trying to achieve. Then I kind of figure out, well, what's the difficulty level going to be here? What's the number of successes that they need to have versus the number of failures that they could accumulate? So I could start with something like they need to accumulate 3 successes before they accumulate 3 failures, or 2 failures, or whatever you want. Then I choose the appropriate skills that the PCs could use for the challenge based on the objective and the setting. For example, in a sneaking challenge, I might say that you can use stealth and deception and perception, but for that jungle navigation or travel sequence, they could use skills like survival or nature and perception or whatever you think fits. Then I incorporate the failure into the narrative. What does it mean if they don't succeed? It doesn't mean that they don't get there if they're traveling. It just may mean there is some other consequence. And it's important to let the players know up front that something's going to happen. Sometimes I just tell them, here's what will happen if you don't make it. Other times I leave it a little bit of a mystery, but they know that there is a consequence. And it may be something like, okay, you tried to sneak past the guards found you and, they tried to arrest you. Or maybe you got lost in that jungle and it increased your travel time by a certain amount of days, which may have an impact of what's going on in the world and the story. Now, one of my favorite parts about using skill challenges is that it sort of forces creativity and teamwork. They have to work together to overcome the challenge. And they have to think out of the box a little bit about how they will use their skills in creative ways. And as I said before, it's a way for me to provide a little bit of structure for action sequences that aren't combat. A great example of this is a chase scene. Now, I recently ran a chase-centered skill challenge in my Guardians of Getica campaign with my family here at the house, and the objective of that challenge was to catch a fright, a type of monster in this campaign world, that started running away as soon as it was spotted. And to accomplish this, I allowed them to use all of their abilities. They could use strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, or charisma. I can hear some of you saying right now, looking at the screen, and saying, that's not a skill challenge, that's an ability challenge. Well, the DM in me would say, are you sure about that? Because if you think about it, skills are really just ability checks that have a certain framework around them that allow you to add your proficiency based on some sort of knowledge or training. So for the chase that we just had a couple days ago, they used skills like athletics, which was really strength, and acrobatics, which was really dexterity, to overcome obstacles and gain ground on their opponent. They also used perception, wisdom, and investigation, intelligence, to see where the fright was going and to figure out a more efficient route that they could follow to catch it. And they even used persuasion, or charisma, to persuade the crowd to move out of the way so that they had a really clear path to chase the fright. Since I knew this skill challenge was potentially going to happen, I prepared a set of notes to explain what happened with each success based on the 6 abilities. Here's what my preparation looked like for that type of skill challenge. I broke it down by ability. Strength. The creature pushes over a cart, blocking its path, and the guardians must quickly move the debris out of the way to continue the chase. One of the guardians must make a strength or athletics check to move the cart. Dexterity. The creature darts down a steep stairway, and the guardians must quickly navigate the steps in order to keep up. So one of the guardians must make a dexterity or acrobatics check to avoid tripping and losing their footing. Constitution. The Ironbane Fright unleashes a cloud of rust particles, and the guardians must endure the effects of the rust cloud and keep fighting forward. One of the guardians must make a Constitution check to resist the rust cloud's damage. Intelligence. The creature darts down a narrow alley, and the guardians must quickly determine what's the best route that they can use to keep up with it. One of the guardians must make an intelligence or investigation check to navigate the alleyways. Wisdom. The creature leaps over a fence, and the guardians must decide to either follow it or find another way around. One of the guardians must make a wisdom or perception check to assess the situation and make the best decision. Charisma. The creature charges through the crowded market, and one of the guardians must make a charisma or persuasion check to persuade the people to clear a path so that they can find the fright. So you can see by prepping a skill challenge in this way, I've already got some descriptions ready, and I can better adapt on the fly if I need to. If they fail, I know exactly what they didn't do in each one of those situations. Now, I mentioned I try to work failure into the narrative. In this case, my players didn't succeed. But it didn't mean the game was over or the story was over. It meant that I had to explain how the fright escaped, and they would need to track it down a different way. Luckily, they succeeded in some other investigation and survival checks as they were investigating the area, and they were able to figure out the direction that the fright was going so they could start moving that way. But you see, the downside is that they couldn't catch it at the moment, and it potentially could cause more problems for everybody because they let it get away. So it fits the narrative. And it was fun to roll, and you can rapid fire describe things and make it just as fun as what it would be like if it was a combat situation, without it being a combat situation. But you know, I'm pretty loose in how I implement this whole concept. I don't think I've ever run a skill challenge the same way twice. Like I said, I tend to use it for non-combat action scenes, but you could potentially use it for things like puzzles or investigations or even some social encounters. Now, some of those may be a little bit trickier, but there are people smarter than me out there that can figure it out and leave some suggestions in the comments below. 4E was not necessarily for me as a whole, but it doesn't mean that it wasn't a well thought out game with some pretty cool stuff in it. I just think of it as another supplement that I can pick and choose from. So even though it was originally introduced in 4th edition, I found skill challenges to be pretty useful in my 5e games, and they will be in my games probably from here on out. Now, I hope this video has been helpful for you in what to do or even what not to do. If you don't like what I'm doing, maybe you found a different way that you can use on your own, and that's great. You should do that. All right, so we made it to the end of the video, and I owe you a Geek Philosophy quote. And because I really like Picard Season 3, I'm watching it as it's coming out episode by episode. It's killing me. I'm going to leave you with a quote from Captain Picard, before he was the Admiral. Being first at any cost is not always the point. Cheers.